You're sabotaging your development as a driver if you don't know your driver type. I've coached hundreds of students over the last year, including real-world racing drivers, and they can all be described by a combination of these 3 driver types. We'll explain the 3 driver types, identify your driver type, and give you actionable advice to improve your driving. If you're struggling to progress in sim racing, there will be something in this video that will help you to improve, so it's crucial that you take the time to digest this whole video. This is the underdriver. The first driver type, and the most common among newer, less confident drivers. Underdriving is as simple as it sounds, never quite pushing the car to its limit. Underdrivers exist mainly at the beginner and advanced levels of driver development. We will talk about these advanced level drivers later, but because they represent a minority of drivers in sim racing, we're first going to start by talking about the beginner level underdriver. When you watch the onboards of an underdriver, they're almost always in complete control of the car, and they can actually set pretty consistent lap times, but they lack the fundamental understanding of how to control the car at the limit of grip. They rarely spin, not because they have excellent car control, but because they rarely reach the limit. When they do reach the limit, they struggle to keep the car under control, and their natural reaction to spinning is to slow down and return to a safe, stable approach of underdriving the car. But remember when I said that underdrivers also exist at the advanced level of driver development? What sets the advanced level underdrivers apart from the beginners? It's hard to believe, but this is the onboard of a 9K rated driver. The difference here is that high level drivers also have the car handling skills of overdrivers. They have the ability to simultaneously know where the limit is and drive fractionally under that limit in order to be consistent and keep their tyres in the right working window. An underdriver can't jump straight from beginner to advanced without first embracing the other 2 driver types as part of their progression. If you want to make progress faster, you can get a free 7-day trial of my online course, iRacing Fundamentals, via the link in the description. The overdriver, the second type of driver, has no trouble identifying the limit. They can keep the car close to or even slightly over the limit in all corners. Because they spend more time driving at the limit, they rarely lose control of the car. They exist mostly in the beginner to intermediate levels of driver development. The problem for overdrivers comes when they set what feels like their perfect lap, only to realise they're still over a second slower versus the very best drivers. That's because there's one thing that overdrivers need to know in order to progress, but to understand what that is, we first need to have an understanding of the third driver type. Overthinking in motorsport is a double-edged sword. You do need to think about the reasons why you lose time compared to the fastest drivers, but I coach far too many students that genuinely have a really good understanding of the theory. They just struggle to translate that theory into practice. This is what I mean by an overthinker. Someone who knows a lot, fixates on the wrong things, and changes too many things in their technique to ever successfully implement the core techniques that they should be working on. Overthinkers are common among all levels of driver development, from beginner right the way through to advanced level drivers. I'd actually group myself into this type of driver. Whenever I'm learning a new track, I always take a look at the fastest times before running any practice. After an hour of practice, I'll still be around a second off of the pace. My instinct is to think about every single thing that could be costing me lap time. But in reality, I know that the answer is I just need more seat time. Invariably after more practice, my lap times come down despite not making any radical changes to my approach. I know this is a flaw of mine, but it still takes conscious effort on my part to combat my natural tendency of overthinking things. So we've explained the 3 driver types, but how can you tell which driver type you are? I want to give you 3 questions to help you decide. First, do you struggle to describe the handling characteristics of a car? Even one you're familiar with, then you're probably an underdriver. Why? Because handling characteristics only show themselves when you drive at the limit. Let's take understeer for example. Understeer is simply describing what happens to the car when the front tyres lose grip before the rear tyres. If you never push the car to the limit, then the tyres never lose grip, and you never discover the car's tendency to understeer. Next, are you comfortable handling the car at the limit? If you're comfortable controlling the car on the limit, you're more likely on the overdriving side of the spectrum. Comfort at the limit comes from time spent at the limit, and these drivers have gone through the painful process of spinning out at all phases of the corner before coming to grips with exactly how to manage the car at the limit. Finally, do you struggle to implement in practice what you already understand in theory? If you feel that your theoretical knowledge far exceeds your practical ability, you're probably an overthinker. When you're immersed in a hobby, it's natural that you want to learn everything you can about the hobby, but the risk is that you learn far too much to be able to accurately identify what you need to be working on first. Now in reality, nobody is just one type of driver. We all exist on the spectrum of these three driver types, but knowing your dominant tendencies can help you to identify what you need to work on first to improve as a driver. If you're an underdriver, the first thing you need to do is get comfortable with handling the car on the limit. In practice sessions, make sure you push the car to the limit in all corners. Even if you spin, even if the driving suffers, you want to identify corners where you're under the limit and build up experience of how the car feels when it's at the limit. To begin with, you're going to spin. When you're under the limit, you can get away with harsh inputs because the car always has more grip to give. On corner exit, you can smash the throttle, and because the car has more grip, you won't encounter oversteer. As soon as you start driving on the limit, the car will be far more sensitive to your inputs. You need to go through the process of spinning out, understanding why you spun, and refining your inputs while keeping the aim of pushing the car to the limit in all corners. Done correctly, underdrivers will be able to see a lap time improvement fairly quickly. Even if it's just in one or two corners, it will become extremely evident that the car has more grip to give, and that you can carry more speed through almost every corner. With time, that raw speed will translate into consistency as you understand the causes for your spins and how to control them. Ultimately, the first goal of an underdriver should be to shift their driving style more in the direction of the overdriver. Talking about overdrivers, there's one thing they need to hear. Lap time improvement does not come from driving more perfectly at the limit. It comes from increasing the amount of grip that's available at the limit. Drivers from all driver types too often equate being fast with being on the limit, and it's this connection that overdrivers need to break in order to see improvement. It's true that at the very highest level, being extremely close to the limit will be the fastest way around the track, but if you're more than 1.5 seconds off the pace, you will be able to modify your technique, increase the amount of grip that's available to you, and actually be able to go faster while simultaneously being more under the limit. And this really is an amazing combination, one that makes me smile every time it happens in a coaching session, because not only has the student found lap time, but they've found lap time in a way that is more consistent and repeatable. Overdrivers need to stop taking the same approach to practice. Instead, study the telemetry and onboards of faster drivers, and look for technique differences that you think make them faster. Whenever you change something in your technique, you will be slower initially, but this will pay off in the long term. In contrast, the overthinker does not need to study other drivers to go faster. They need to study their own driving. Overthinkers just need to ask themselves this question in order to improve. What is the most fundamental mistake I'm making in my driving? That's it. If you carry too much speed into a corner and miss the apex, don't think about how more precise trail braking and perfectly timed downshifts would allow you to decelerate 5% faster and make the corner. Just brake earlier. Even at a high level of driving, this remains true. To use myself as an example, I was consistently losing time at turn 1 of Imola, and in the moment, I'd have put this down to overheating my tyres or lacking some piece of knowledge that 7k drivers have that I don't. But when I watched the corner back after the race, my only problem was not using enough track on the entry and carrying too much speed at the apex. The most important thing for each driver type to remember is this. For underdrivers, you need to get comfortable identifying the limit and controlling the car at the limit. You will spin to begin with, but that's part of the process. For overdrivers, you will not find lap time simply by driving more perfectly at the limit. You need to identify technique flaws and correct them, even though you will be slower initially. For overthinkers, you need to identify the most fundamental flaw in your driving and only focus on fixing that